Picture this. You're standing at an empty airport departure gate. The fluorescent lights are kind of buzzing overhead, there's a crumpled boarding pass left on the floor, and outside the window, a flight has just pushed back from the gate. Well, back in October of 2017, a woman boarded a flight in exactly this kind of setting. And then, poof, she just vanished, without a single trace. In this explainer, we're going to unravel one of the most absolutely staggering financial mysteries of our modern era. Now, the details of that specific flight, they're absolutely crucial. She boarded a one-way Ryanair flight from Sofia, Bulgaria, straight to Athens, Greece. And, this wasn't some spontaneous weekend getaway. Our sources tell us she'd actually received advance warning that a sealed U.S. federal indictment was coming her way. She knew the walls were closing in fast. And from the very second she stepped off that plane in Athens, no one has seen her publicly since, not once. And that brings us to this mind-blowing number, $5 million. That's the massive, still active reward the FBI is offering right now for any info leading to the capture of Ruja Ignatova. She's the literal mastermind behind a fraud so big it's hard to wrap your head around, and she currently sits right there on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. I mean, how does a single person command a $5 million bounty and just disappear in the digital age? Well, to figure that out, we really have to understand what she built.
Which brings us to part 1, the empire selling the future.
So let's travel back for a second to 2014 in Bulgaria. That's where Ruja Ignatova and Sebastian Greenwood launched OneCoin. But here's the thing. They didn't just sell a product. They built this mesmerizing, almost hypnotic illusion of wealth. They threw these massive, euphoric events that honestly felt a lot more like religious revivals than your standard tech conferences. And the sheer human scale of what happened next, it's just devastating. 3 million. And these weren't, Wall Street hedge funds or billionaire investors taking a calculated risk. These were 3 million everyday, ordinary victims. We're talking about nurses counting out their hard-earned savings, farmers in rural fields, retired couples sitting at their kitchen tables, staring at a laptop, entirely convinced they were buying into the financial dream of a lifetime. This idea spread literally like wildfire. It reached 175 countries across 6 different continents. They marketed OneCoin as this revolutionary new cryptocurrency. They even called it the Bitcoin killer. And that seductive promise, right? Getting in early on the next big financial revolution. It resonated across borders, across languages, cultures, creating this sprawling global empire practically overnight.
Now, how did they pull off that explosive growth? They used a multi-level marketing, or MLM, structure. Basically, investors earned commissions just for recruiting new investors. And honestly, this is the really dark genius of the whole operation. Those innocent victims we just talked about, they unknowingly became the fraud's sprawling global sales network. They went out and recruited their friends, their families, their local communities, totally 100% believing they were sharing a genuine, life-changing opportunity.
Which leads us to the stakes. $4 billion. That's the official, conservative estimate from the U.S. Department of Justice on the funds OneCoin raked in. But get this. Some financial analysts who've looked at the true global scope of this thing, they suspect the real figure might actually hit a staggering $15 billion once you factor in all those international markets. $15 billion. It's a pool of money so massive, it's honestly kind of hard to even conceptualize. Let's move into part 2, the descent, cracks in the facade.
Because, well, no illusion can last forever, right? Just beneath that glossy, stadium-sized tech conference exterior was a clinical, horrifying truth. See, a real cryptocurrency runs on a decentralized blockchain, a secure public ledger. But OneCoin, it was quite literally nothing more than a manual SQL database. Seriously, think of it like your standard everyday Excel spreadsheet. There was zero advanced technology here. Instead, values were manually typed into a computer just to make it look like the coin's price was going up. It was a complete and total technological mirage. And the crazy part is, we know this because of people like Bjorn Bjerg. He was a Norwegian blockchain developer that OneCoin actually approached in 2016 to build out their tech infrastructure. So he looks under the hood and makes this damning realization. As he put it, there was no real blockchain, only a database. He bravely turned down the high-paying job and blew the whistle. But tragically, his warnings were pretty much ignored by the exact people who really should have been listening.
So, while Ruja vanished into thin air, the dominoes behind her definitely began to fall. Her inner circle completely collapsed. Her co-founder, Sebastian Greenwood, was grabbed in Thailand in 2018 and eventually got hit with a 20-year prison sentence. Mark Scott, the lawyer who helped launder $400 million for the scheme, he got a 10-year sentence. Even her own brother, Konstantin Ignatov, was arrested in LA and ended up cooperating with the FBI. So her accomplices fell one by one, leaving Ruja as the absolute only escapee.
All right, on to part 3, the hidden truth, a system asleep.
Look, a fraud of this magnitude doesn't just succeed because of one highly charismatic criminal. It succeeds because the entire global regulatory system was essentially asleep at the wheel. The very guardrails that were supposed to protect those 3 million ordinary investors, they were just way too slow-moving to actually do anything. Let's look at the timeline. The company is founded in 2014. By 2016, explicit warnings from whistleblowers like Bjorke are already out there, but authorities just ignored them. Ignatova doesn't even vanish until late 2017. And incredibly, it took all the way until 2024 for a sweeping UK global asset freeze to finally happen. The system literally watched a spreadsheet consume billions of dollars, and it moved at a completely glacial pace. In fact, it wasn't even the regulators who first sounded the loudest alarm here. It actually took an investigative BBC podcast back in 2019, done by journalist Jamie Bartlett and called The Missing Crypto Queen, to finally break this story out into the global mainstream consciousness. It was that massive wave of public pressure that eventually helped push milestones like the historic 2024 UK High Court worldwide freezing order, which really proves that asset recovery efforts for the victims are thankfully still highly active today. Okay, but let's address the elephant in the room. What actually happened to Ruja Ignatova? Well, in 2023, Bulgarian investigative journalists unearthed this incredibly chilling claim from a police informant. The rumor goes that Ignatova was actually murdered way back in 2018 by the exact same organized crime figures who helped facilitate her disappearance in the first place, and that her body was dumped into the Ionian Sea from a yacht. I mean, wow. However, and this is a big however, it's super important to contrast that wild rumor with the official reality. The FBI has never confirmed that assassination account, not once. Their investigation remains completely open, that $5 million bounty is very much still active, and the legal proceedings against her are moving forward aggressively, even in her absence. So whether she's out there living off billions in the shadows or she met a really brutal end, the legal pursuit, it hasn't stopped for a second. And that brings us to part 4. The Cipher, the ultimate cost. You see, this specific crime connects to a much larger, really universal truth. Yes, it's a story about human greed, absolutely. But it's also about systemic blind spots and the profound illusion of financial safety we have in our modern, borderless digital world. The ultimate takeaway from this explainer is the staggering human cost. 3 million victims, a simple database built on pure lies, and a regulatory system that was just too slow to save them. We're left with everyday, ordinary people permanently waiting for justice, watching their life savings literally evaporate into an Excel spreadsheet. And we're also left with the ultimate, most haunting question of all. Where is she? How does a person armed with a $4 billion war chest just simply cease to exist in our hyper-connected modern world? It challenges literally everything we think we know about money, about power, and about accountability. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive helped you grasp the immense scale of this mystery. Until next time, keep asking the hard questions.